Hey, welcome. This is going to be an extremely basic overview of how to use Google Docs, starting with how to set up a Gmail account. So if you've got some experience with Google Docs or you're comfortable with word processors and think you could figure it out, you can go ahead and do the Google Docs and Slides tips and tricks instead. If you are completely uncomfortable with Google products or just computers in general and you want a really in-depth look at how these features kind of compare to features you would expect to find in Microsoft Word, this is the video for you. And then you'll go on to the next one that's about Google Slides, which is the PowerPoint equivalent that Google has to offer. So decide on which level you're more comfortable with. I would strongly recommend having a browser open and following along with this as I do different things so you can play around for it and get a feel for it. You're going to understand the features a lot better and how to find them if you are, finding them and able to do the same things as me as I'm going through this. Okay. So first things first, let's get a Gmail account set up. If I start on google.com, just the search engine, this button here that says sign in, if you click on that, you can then, instead of signing in, if you don't already have a Gmail account, you would go down to here where it says create account and click on that. You probably want one for yourself before you want one to manage your business. And this is really simple. You just put in your first and last name, and then you pick a username, and it'll tell you if it's something that's already been taken. And then I can't imagine that my name hasn't already been taken, but we'll see. Okay, and then when you click on next, it'll tell you if that username's taken and suggest something else. And I'm not actually going to go through with creating this, but we'll pretend. The next page is going to ask you for either a phone number or an email address or both to recover your password. This is important for if you ever forget your password and still want to get back into your email account, they can send confirmation to whatever alternate email or phone number you provide. So this is like a backup in case you lose your account. So it's good to put them in there, and you do have to put in your birthday. Let's just make some stuff up today. We're not really making this, so it doesn't matter. And I'm not going to put in one, but it's a good idea too. You have to look at their terms and say that you agree to their terms. I don't think this is going to create it yet. Whoops. All right. That did make the email account. So I've got that email account now. I'm adding to the problem of email bloat, I guess. But that's as simple as it is to make an email account. Now that you have that, you not only have a Gmail account, but you also have access to a bunch of other Google features, which you can see if you click on the little tic-tac-toe board or waffle, whatever you prefer to call it. And Drive is going to be one of those options. Drive is where all of your files, including the Google Docs that you make, will be organized. So right now mine should be empty because I don't have anything. But if I pop out of this incognito tab and over here, there you can see all of the documents that I have. And there's some folders here as well to help keep you organized. In your Drive, to add a new anything, whether it's a document, a sheet, whatever, a folder, you can click on this new icon here to select any of those things. It'll also let you upload documents from your computer. Okay, so over here I have a just basic Google Doc. To create one of those from anywhere, you can just open a new tab, do a search for Google Doc is one way. And then when you go in there, it'll let you click through to create one. Another way to get to that is to click on this little tic-tac-toe board. And if you go down a little bit, Docs is one of the options available. Both the link and that option will take you here. You can choose from a variety of templates that they have, and there's more than this that you can see here. And you can also see your own recent documents. So what I would recommend doing right now is just pausing, taking a moment, creating a blank document, and just putting any random text you like in there. You can even copy and paste it in if you want to, but just so you have something in there to play around with. And then when you're ready, come on back. Okay, so you'll notice that right now my document is named Untitled Document. That's the default. When you go to click on this box, it'll let you type and rename it. But as soon as you click in it, it'll put in whatever you have on this first line. So it'll go for longer than that if you had a longer first sentence. But just so you're aware, it'll automatically title it with whatever you have there. If you don't like that title, you can absolutely change it. You can see that text is highlighted right now, so I could just call that example document. And that's the name of my thing as well. Next to it here, there's a little folder with an arrow in it that's called Move. If I click on that, it'll allow me to organize it into any of the folders that I have available on my machine and put it somewhere where it makes sense. So that's something that's good to do when you have a new Google document, is to make sure it's saved in a good place. The little cloud with the check mark lets you know that it's saved. The star, you can make this one of your important documents, so it'll be sort of pinned to the top, but those are those basic things. One thing to look at the very beginning is size. If you want to make your font larger, you absolutely can, but if you're having a hard time reading it, you can also just make it look bigger on the page. So this didn't change the text, or it doesn't change the size of the font. It'll still print out at the same size, but it makes it larger on your screen, which can be easier for people to read. You can also make it smaller if you want to see how several pages look, just as an overview, not really to read. So zooming there is one option. I'm going to put it back to 100%. Another option, which this is Google Chrome specific, which is the browser I'm using, but every browser will have something like this. If you click on these dots up here next to your login icon, you can change the zoom of the whole document. So I usually have mine a little small, but just so you can see, this, instead of changing the size of the document, it's changing the size of the toolbars up here. So if you're having trouble reading some of these things, you can make them larger. If you would like to see more of them, you can make it a little bit smaller, and then more icons will fit. You can always expand to see other icons if they're off of the page, but that's just an option if you would like to. And sometimes it's helpful when presenting or sharing information to have those things be a little bit larger. Okay. The next thing I'm going to talk about is putting in images, just because it's fun. Okay. So there's two ways to do this. I can go to the Insert menu up here and go Image and either upload from computer, search the web. I can also pull in from my Google Drive if I have images saved in there, or I could take a picture using the camera on my computer. Another way to add in images is this button right here, which is, I think, a stylized like picture of mountains or something like that, and I have all those same options. So I just searched for dogs last time, and so that came up, and we'll put a dog picture into our Google document. I've selected it, and then if you click Insert, it'll pop in there. Maybe I think the dog's too big, so when I click on it, I can resize it, make the dog a little bit more reasonable sized. And then this is letting me choose whether I want the text to be in line with it, whether I want it to wrap, or whether I want it to break the text. So wrap text means that you can have text next to it on the page, and that'll move around and sometimes look pretty bad depending on how you have it set up. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is how to use the Find feature. And this is something that isn't just in Google Docs. It's something you can use on any web page, in any Word document, pretty much on anything on your computer. And that's using the Control F hotkey. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to hold down the Command key and hit F. If you're on a Windows machine, you hold down Control and hit F. But regardless, when you do that, this little window will pop up that says Find in Document. So if I wanted to see where I said the word dog, it would highlight it in the text for me there. And I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit just to make it a little bit more obvious why this is a nice feature. So it'll go to that part of the text. let's say I wanted to see everywhere I type the letter M. Okay, I've got number 4 of 6 highlighted right now. You can see it's a little bit darker green. And so I can scroll through and it'll bring me to all of the places where I have the letter M pressed. Now this is a little bit silly in this document, which I could read in all of 15 seconds. But if you're editing a longer document, or if you're searching a larger web page for something specific, Control F can be a really great way to find that information quickly. And it's definitely something I taught my students, and it was like a mind-blowing experience for some of them. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. Okay, let's get into some of the basics now. Across the top here, these 2 buttons are your undo and redo buttons. They also have shortcuts on them. So undo is Command Z or Control Z. Redo is Command Y or Control Y, depending on which kind of a machine you're on. That's really an important tool if you have a kid who's talking to you distraught. It's like, I just deleted all of my work. Just tell them to undo it and it will bring all of their work back. You can print next to it there. We already talked about zoom. We're not going to talk about styles, but they're there. Different fonts. There are fewer font choices available than Word, but there's still a lot in there and you can definitely add in more. This changes the font size. So let's say I wanted this to be larger and look like a title. I could also bold it. I've got my other options here. I could change the text color. And then over here, maybe I want it to be center justified. Okay, so those are your justification buttons. We talked about that one already. This is your line spacing, adding in spaces before and after paragraphs. And then we've also got our different types of lists. So if I want to make this a list, I would just highlight it. And then I can just hit return and add to the list as I go. If I want to end it, I would just hit return twice to end that list. And maybe I don't want it to be an ordered list. Maybe I want it to be a bulleted list. Okay, so that's an option too. Both of these, if you click on them, they have different layout options. So the ordered list, the numbered list has different outline options with it. The bulleted list has different styles of bullets with it. Okay. And then these buttons here just move you one direction or the other as far as justifying goes. The same thing can be done with this ruler here. I can adjust where I want my list or my edge of my margin to be, and that's an easy thing to do. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is commenting, which is one of the excellent features in Google Docs that really makes it clear why using a browser-based word processor is an interesting idea. Okay, so to give you an example, I'm going to go back to my syllabus here. And you can see that I left a comment for my other editors on this piece that just was clarifying something, and I got responses. Okay, and then down here, Josh, I think, had a question for me. And so he left me some comments there. One of the cool things you can do is say if I'm commenting on something, and there's a couple different ways to comment. I'm going to start by highlighting the word that I want to attract people's attention to and where I want to anchor the comment to. And then I can either click add a comment here, or I can click add a comment up here. And I think it's also under either edit or insert that you can, yeah, that's it there as well. And there it gives you the hotkey option. So if I hold down a command, option, and M at the same time, it'll make a comment. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. But once you have some text selected, you can say add a comment. And I'll say, need to use this language. Okay. Well, it doesn't have the feature I want. Let me see. No, sometimes you can assign a task to someone through a comment, but I'm not remembering how to do that right now. That's maybe a little bit beyond what we need to do here. The point is, if you are editing a document with your students, or if you're sharing something with them, Commenting is one way that they can talk back and forth to each other as they're collaboratively working on something. And it's also a way that they can post questions as they are reading if they're having difficulty with something and let you know that that's an issue. To do that, you would have to share it with them. So I'm going to talk about sharing next. This big blue share button up here is where you want to be. So right now, it just has me on here, and I can individually add people's names, and email addresses. So if I wanted to add Josh to this one, I see his email there, and I can put him as editor, viewer, or commenter. So editors can absolutely change anything on the page. They can delete the entire thing if they want to and replace it with whatever they want. It does not matter. They can do everything that you can do. Commenters are allowed to put comments on it, but not edit the text directly. So if, let's say I had Josh commenting and he noticed a typo, he could put a comment by it and say, hey, you need to fix this, but he wouldn't be able to fix the typo himself. Okay, and then viewers can't make comments. They can only see. So when you have this notify box checked, it means it's going to send an email out to them saying, hey, whoever so-and-so shared this document with you. Okay. Another way to allow people to have access to it is to turn on link sharing. And so right now I have it set so that anyone with the link can comment. If I click copy link, that puts it in my clipboard, and I can paste it into an email or onto a Teams chat or whatever to share that information. I don't have to have it set to that though. I have anyone with the link can view, so they wouldn't be able to comment, or anyone with the link can edit. Anyone with the link can edit is kind of terrifying, because if they have the link, they can put whatever they want in there, delete all of it. So I would warn against that unless you're really a fan of chaos, and maybe leave it at comment if you're going to turn link sharing on. Again, this will just be people who you send the link to, but then they can send that link on to anyone else as well. Not that they probably would. Nothing you're sharing in your Google document is probably that interesting, but just something to be aware of. Once you copy the link, you can paste it. If it's something that I'm going to have students navigate to in real time and I'm not sending them the email address, I'll use a URL shortener, which I can talk more about later. Okay, so that's sharing, commenting. We did page setup. So along with sharing, one of the cool things is the history function. So the history on my example document is pretty boring, so I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go back to the syllabus, and then I'm going to click Open Version History. So what this does is it lets me see a edit by edit version of the document going all the way back to its creation. So when it first started out, the document was blank, and then a little bit later it started having information in it. It changed over time. You can see who is responsible for the edits, because we are sharing them in the first way, not with link sharing, but we're sharing them by putting people's names on them. That allows us to see who's doing what edits, okay? And changes are highlighted on these versions. So between the version before it and this one, this text was added, and I can tell because it's highlighted, and this text was removed, and I can tell because it's struck through like that. If I make a mistake and I want to go back to an older version, I can click on the Restore This Version button, but you want to be careful with that, because it can you can lose access to some of the newer stuff. So if you don't want to restore a particular version, you can just go back. Going through and looking at who's doing what editing can let you understand who's contributing what to a project. It can help you detect plagiarism sometimes, and it's something that allows you to look into your students' process if they're collectively editing a document or just editing it on their own. All right, then the last thing I want to talk about before I give you like a couple just reasons why I think you should also watch the optional extras one is about tables, okay? Because tables are something that I as a science teacher often want, and so I would like you to know how to do them as well. If you go to the Insert menu, down here where it says Table, all these little boxes, you can drag out the size of table that you want. And there are limits. I don't think it'll let you go past 20 on here. But you can always get around that in the document. This is just to establish your table. So let's do 4 by 5. Okay. And so right now it's all on one page, but I'm worried that it's going to get onto multiple pages, and I'd like it to all stay together. So instead of leaving it at the bottom of this page, I'm going to put in a page break so it's all on the next page. And there's 2 ways to do that. You can go to Insert and then Break, Page Break. It's telling you that the keyboard shortcut for that is Command and Enter. I think it's Control and Enter on a PC, but for a Mac it's Command Enter. And then that just moves it from being on this page to being on the next page. Okay, so let's give our column some titles. Okay, we'll have a bunch of dogs. It's not going to make any sense. I highlighted all of these first columns just by pulling my cursor through them. I can bold them. I can center justify the text if I would like to. Fantastic. Okay. So one thing that I like to do with tables sometimes, and it doesn't really make sense on the columns that I've chosen, but you may want to do this, is you may want to merge some boxes on your table. So if I wanted these 2 boxes to really just be one box, I'm going to go up to Format after I have them highlighted, and then down to Table and say Merge Cells. This Format table is also where you can add more rows or delete rows, and it has one more thing we're going to do. Let's say I'm doing this not as a digital document, but I'm going to be printing this to give to students. Well, it's not letting me do the thing I want to do. For some reason, it's not letting me go back to having a cursor, which is bumming me out. I don't think this is going to work the way I want it to. Okay, so let's give it a try though. One thing is, if I could actually get it to work and pull down, you can enlarge the size of the table. I've done that by putting in returns, and I don't think it's going to work the way I want it to. But you can pull down on the bottom tab if it actually switches from being the typing cursor to being the arrow kind, and give yourself some more space. And then in if you go to Format and then Table, and you go to Distribute Rows, it should space it all out, and it did it. Okay, so that's an easy way to give your students some more space to write. It'll make them be evenly sized rows, and you can see the title ones that I didn't need them to have space to write in stayed the same size because I hadn't had them highlighted. Okay, so now students could write or draw in that table as a printed document, and not have the issue of trying to cramp into a tiny amount of space. Okay, I would encourage you to watch the tips and tricks if you're not feeling totally overwhelmed at this point. If this was as much as you can absorb in a day, I completely understand, and that is fine. But we're going to talk about some ways to make this more accessible and to make it more individualized and really unleashing the power of Google Docs. One of the things I'll be talking about is this add-on here and how to get it. It's called Read Aloud, and it will read a document for you. So if you have students who have issues with print, you can talk them through how to install this extension to Chrome. And I imagine there are ones for other browsers as well if you're not a Chrome user. And it will read to you.
This is my title. It is written by me. Welcome to editing Google Docs.
Okay, and so you can send them text and be confident that they'll be able to access it even if they have issues reading text. Okay, so that's something that's really cool to learn how to do, and is one of the many things I'll be talking about in the tips and tricks video. So I hope that you feel more comfortable with Google Docs now to the point where you could at least create something in it that you would share with students, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with today.